In almost all situations, war usually implies that you want someone to die. Funny thing is, in many cases, that someone is you. Now, how this may be real, one may ask. Well, usually, if your life is very miserable, if one embraces so much misery in their life, the first impulse of the mind is to commit suicide, because the mind was never designed for misery. It was designed for survival, yes, but misery means putting your own self constantly in survival mode, because survival mode constantly creates misery, right? Now, the point is, when you constantly live in misery, right, or in survival mode, because there's a difference in between, you either become tranquil, like animals are, or you simply become miserable, like humans are. Because humans are far more capable of attuning to all the possible dimensions of the universe. Animals are very tranquil because they prefer being connected to all their senses. Their life being in danger constantly means that they require to stay on the alert all the time. When it comes to humans, the point is, being put into misery, they will simply want to commit suicide. But the more and more narcissistic specifications and other social disturbances, mental disturbances, emotional disturbances, psychological ones, also, play more influence, right? More and more influence on the person, right? On who you think you are, the more you will tend to actually want someone else to die instead. Because it's the same principle as accepting the blame. Just because people don't accept the blame, don't accept the fact that they are the ones who keep themselves in poverty. Well, the point is, they will always blame someone else because it's much easier than to actually take the blame. So, the point is, instead of wanting to kill yourself because of all that misery, why not have other people suffer, right? And that's how you have fully fledged narcissists work. But the point is, you don't have to be a narcissist for, thinking this way. Because ultimately, misery loves company, irrespective of whom it is. Children want to see other children suffer, parents want to see their children suffer, right? It's just an endless cycle, right? And this is how misery works. Your neighbor may not be richer than you, may not be more awesome or more handsome than you, but well, what if they instead of you die, right? Like, what if they die in your place, right? Because this is how things go. People don't know how to use their mental, emotional, psychological energies, so they will simply expect, sooner or later, for someone to die, right? This is technically war. When you concentrate your energy on lower vibes, that is a sense of war. Now, cancer is another sense of war, right? Because what cancer means, well, people know it only at the physical level, most likely. But even there, what cancer means is a part of you turns against you, right? Some cells suffer a mutation. The body may not simply cope with it, right? The cells are not detected in time and they're not disposed of, and well, they spiral out of control. Even so, daily, the body most likely kills several dozen, well, probably even thousand, cancerous preformations, right? But the point is, well, the body can handle that, but each and every one of those preformations is still like a little declaration of war. When you hate yourself and you call yourself all the bad names, that's still a kind of war. Many people are stuck in the idea that war is only, fought by people with armed rifles and, bearing high technological equipment, right? Or, it is also something that implies machines. Don't forget that the most sophisticated machine on the planet is the human body. Because you may have the most sophisticated tank in the world, is not going to fight its war alone. You can program it to do so, but programming means limitation, right? Through programming, you constantly create limitation. Just like you program the human mind to be limited, you program a machine to do some limited things, right? Because a machine functions with data, and data never changes. You can have data be randomized and then furthermore act based on the randomizations. But the randomizations can only be limited, right? Because coding requires a while to write, right? So you don't want to write a code that is too messy, too long, because it's gonna have a certain imprint. So war is basically on every level, right? Even in the water, you have microorganisms fighting one another. And, well, even in nature, you see tribes of animals fight one another, different species or same species. It simply doesn't matter. You see inside tribes, right? Fighting one for another, right? One for the other's lives. Or, well, they want to overthrow the specific ruler. That is also a certain type of war. It is just the fact that people have gotten used too much to the idea of, armed warfare, right? When even a protest is a way of silent war, right? When you hate yourself, that's another kind of war. That's a psychological war. You are fighting against yourself, right? Because you're not embracing, freedom. You're not embracing the idea of being plain, being simple in the face of life. You just prefer more and more knowledge, right? You prefer calling to your mind more and more because it makes for a beautiful distraction. But a distraction is another sort of war, right? It is a war against your own freedom. Because in this world, you just have to keep people distracted from who they are. That will attract, well, a lot of negativity. That will attract a lot of suffering. And obviously, it will attract a lot of misery. And, well, misery is a result of ignorance. And ignorance is the grand, well, problem, right? Because, well, ignorance is the greatest sin after all. And war is, well, a result of that. After all, ignorance is another kind of war. It is a spiritual war, it is a psychological war, it's an all out war against yourself. Because what do ignorant people do? They destroy themselves. They have only one body, but they just seek to destroy it. They don't care what they listen to, they don't care what emotions they feed it with, right? All they do is they impose a lot of suffering, right? They're just like a tyrant, right? Who rules over the defenseless cells of their own body, right? Science says there are around 4 billion cells in your own body, and they're doing the best they can so that you can experience everything possible through your physical body. But, well, people sometimes prefer tormenting it because that's how they've been programmed. And in many cases, it's not even their own thoughts, but the thoughts of their ancestors and what they have been feeding themselves with. So all this being said, war is nothing else than, well, fighting against your own self. Because as you fight your own self, right? And again, it is nothing else than psychiatry. Because if you fight yourself, right, you don't fight you, you fight yourself. You create an image and you hate that image. And then you fight against it. But ultimately, you just fight against an illusion. And you invest a lot of energy and life force into that hatred, into that denial, right? Denial of your own freedom, denial of your own happiness. And, well, that's going to cause a lot of misery. The more misery you acquire, let's not forget that which has been karmically given to you through your parents, right? Because there's also family karma, there's also generational karma, and there's also ancestral karma. Well, all those pieces put side by side, well, there's gonna be a lot of misery. And the more misery there is, sooner or later, people will probably fall for it, and, well, they will identify themselves with that. The moment they do, they believe there is nothing else to this life than misery. And the more they invest into that, well, they will end up doing more and more harm because they will stop doing full harm to themselves. They will also want to impose harm on others because that is what becoming a moralist is. You believe that what you have identified yourself with is the only thing in this world and nothing else can be. So the point is, everyone else is wrong and, well, technically you are right. This is the premise of a war. Because basically in a war, whoever is fighting for your idea, right? Well, that is someone who is true, right? But everyone else is the enemy. So ultimately war is an aspect of, dominion. You want others to bow down to your ideas as well. But those ideas are not you. You have acquired them from an external source because that's why you call them yours. They're not you. You have acquired them from somewhere. So all of this is nothing else than a journey through psychiatry, because you're accepting some ideas, you're identifying yourself with those, and through comparison, which is the greatest thief of joy, you're seeing everyone as the enemy because they don't see things the same way as you do, right? Which makes you a big nutcase, because everyone was meant to live their own life and to experience things their own way. All this being said, hopefully this video was introspective enough. Don't forget that everyone has their own experience of life, and everyone is unique. If you deny this, you deny technically life. So, well, you're kind of an enemy of life as well as progress. Because when you identify yourself with something, you obviously become an enemy of progress because you will no longer want that something to change. All this being said, hopefully you appreciated this video, hopefully you found it introspective enough. You are appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Ferenc Board signing out.